The Dukes of Hazzard, Starsky and Hutch. Who's gonna win? Ladies and gentlemen, non-binary, gender fluid, and everybody else in between, welcome to Box Office Battles. A show where we pit two similar movies together, head-to-head, one-on-one, baby, and see who comes out on top. Today's episode, movie remakes of classic TV shows. Starsky and Hutch versus Dukes of Hazzards. Let's get into it. In this fight, we have 3 rounds. The first round is plot. We're going to analyze the catalyst of the story and see how it flows. The second round is of the players, who makes up the stories and who the villains are. And the final bloody round is of audience reception, box office numbers, and legacy. A great way to end the fight. And stay tuned. I even asked some of my creator friends what they think of both movies. All right, let's get this crazy train moving, baby. The Dukes of Hazzard released in 2005 and is based on the TV show of the same name, which was released in 1979. Starsky and Hutch released in 2004 and is based on the TV show of the same name that came out in 1975. The two movies are incredibly similar. They follow 2 sets of 2 guys and their car in wacky adventures. In Dukes of Hazzards, they are rednecks getting in all types of trouble with the corrupt Georgia police. In Starsky and Hutch, they are the police, and they're 2 cops that get thrown together as partners as they try to solve a big drug bust. 2 different sides of the law, but 2 guys with a car nonetheless. Alright, let's stop playing around and see what happens in both installments. Starting with Dukes of Hazzard, it's a classic redneck movie about fast cars. The plot is as followed. We see cousins Bo and Luke Duke running a moonshining business in their 1969 Dodge Charger, where they are constantly harassed by a corrupt county commissioner, Boss Hogg, and the sheriff, Roscoe. The boys leave the General Lee in a field after a botched moonshining delivery, and the sheriff has it vandalized. We learn that Hazzard County, Georgia hosts a car race every year, and Bo has won it the last 4 years, and he's going for 5. Billy Prickett, a famous race car driver who grew up in Hazzard, comes back to town to race in this year's event. Meanwhile, Sheriff Roscoe plants a fake moonshining still in the Duke's farm. Not really too sure why they had to plant a fake one, because I'm sure Uncle Jesse and the Dukes are making moonshine like 10 feet away, but whatever, it's there regardless. The Fuzz then seize the property in an effort to take control of their land for reasons we find out later. The Duke family is forced out of their land. Bo and Luke, not knowing how to stay out of trouble, then go investigate why Boss Hogg seized the property. They go to a construction site and find a map marked with all the adjacent farms as well as theirs. The boys then steal a safe belonging to Boss Hogg in the most jackass way possible, which is a common theme in this movie. They get it to their friend's house, Sheev, who is a gross redneck government conspirator, who has a lot of explosives. A good friend to have in a time like this. Inside the safe, they find geologic samples and decide to take the samples to the college in Atlanta to see what this all means. At the college, they eventually find out that Boss Hogg is planning to turn Hazzard into a strip mine, making him very rich. Getting caught and eventually running from Campus PD and Atlanta PD, they are arrested. And look who shows up and visits them in the jail cell. Boss Hogg, man. And of course this is a movie, so the bad guy has to explain to the good guys what his evil plan is. Why? Because fuck you, that's why. We learn that yes, he is planning to turn the county into a mine, and he's using professional racer Billy Prickett in the race as a distraction so they can get the bill passed at the local courthouse. After all this, the boys are being transported in the back of a police car. Don't ask me how, because I don't have a single clue, but the boys escape from the cop car, and their handcuffs end up back in their car and run the police on a wild goose chase all the way back to Hazzard. I have no idea. Not sure how they got the gas for that, but moving on. When they get back into town, they realize that Boss Hogg and Roscoe have kidnapped Uncle Jesse and Pauline, their other neighbor. Daisy Duke and Cooter, the mechanic guy, rescue them while the boys distract the police. Bo heads to the race with cops on his tail, and Luke and Uncle Jesse try and foil the police. Bo charges through the race while avoiding the cops and ends up winning the whole thing. Shocking, I know. He continues racing all the way to the courthouse, leading the police, townsfolk, and reporters that way. This ends with the townsfolk rejecting the strip mine proposal, and the town is saved. Boss Hogg then attempts to charge the boys with their laundry list of crimes that they've committed. And believe me, if they were, they'd be in jail for a very long time. The governor is in the court, and he is convinced by Daisy Duke to pardon the boys as they saved the town from corrupt government officials. Wow, what an unbelievable story, man. Let's take a look at our next duo and see how their story plays out. In 1975, we see two very different Bay City police officers. The very manly, very macho David Starsky, who is a by-the-book, very serious officer. And then we see the very easygoing, slacking, and borderline corrupt officer Ken Hutchinson. They are forced to become partners as punishment because they both aren't very good cops. And of course, we see Starsky's 1974 Gran Torino. Meanwhile, we see drug kingpin Reese Feldman and his henchmen create a new type of cocaine that is completely untraceable in scent and taste. And that is scary and wild. When one of his dealers botches a deal, he shoots him on his yacht and dumps the body into the bay. A few days later, the body washes ashore, and Starsky and Hutch are called to the scene. A clue inside the guy's wallet leads them to Reese Feldman. Of course, when they interview him, he denies any knowledge of the crime. But one of his girlfriends mentions that guy was dating a cheerleader. The boys then go and meet and flirt with the cheerleaders. I mean, who wouldn't abuse their powers like that? Police, am I right? Alrighty, then they receive another clue, a jacket of the victim. Huggy Bear, a street informant, directs the cop boys to a motorcycle bar outside of town owned by Big Earl, who might have more information on the jacket and the victim. They suit up as characters from Easy Rider, and they find out from the bartender that Big Earl is in jail. Off to jail they go. When they interview Big Earl, he makes them do humiliating acts for information and a package of cocaine. And side note, I'm not sure how we passed them a package of cocaine through a window, but we're just going to ignore that for the movie's sake and move on. Captain Doby, their police captain, gets quite mad for their actions, and for good reason, because by God, he takes them off the case, again for good reason, telling the boys that the cocaine they got isn't cocaine, but we all know how it's untraceable cocaine. With nothing to investigate, the boys invite the cheerleaders over for a little double date action. While making coffee, Starsky decides, since he doesn't have any sugar, to use the fake cocaine in the coffee, and we'll soon find out how real it is. They go to a nightclub, and my man is zooted out of his mind. He enters a dance competition and ends up firing his gun into the ceiling of the club. I know, it's a crazy night out. I've had those too. Not the gun part, and not the cocaine either, but the... You know what? We're going to move on. The next day, walking back to their car, they are shot at, and they follow the shooter back to his house, to where they are attacked again by knives this time. They grab the attempted murderer and bring him back to police headquarters for questioning. In the questioning, they find out that Feldman sent him, and that Feldman must store his drugs inside his garage. So the boys go undercover as mimes at his daughter's bat mitzvah. The boys confront Feldman and end up shooting his garage door open, which then kills a pony that Feldman got for his daughter. Awkward. Back at PD, the captain of course again is furious and suspends the two cops, which leads them to get into a fight and they split their friendship. Feldman rigs a bomb to Hutch's house, which injures a small neighbor boy, and while visiting him in the hospital, the boys make up and vow to take down Feldman. They send Huggy Bear undercover and learn that they plan on selling the drugs at the charity ball hosted by Feldman by hiding the drugs in the cars that they are going to give away. At the party and in costume, they again confront Feldman, shoot open the trunk, and reveal the drugs. During the ongoing chaos, Feldman and his girlfriend flee the scene, but the boys are right behind them. A car chase ensues, which ends up with Feldman and the girl escaping on their yacht, and the boys driving the car into the water. While they were aiming for the boat, boy did they miss it. Luckily, Huggy Bear was on the boat and knocks Feldman out with a golf club and saves the day. The boys are celebrated as heroes for attaining the biggest drug bust the city has ever seen. With the newly acquired money, Hutch surprises Starsky with a brand new 1974 Gran Torino. And you want to know who they bought it off of? The original Starsky and Hutch, man. Fuck, that's awesome. Wow. What another great movie of a classic 1970s TV show. All right, let's get into the results and see who won round one. Well, comparing the two is tough. Like it always is in these episodes of box office battles. They're very similar. They both follow a duo of guys and their hot rod car, while they try and take down the bad guys and save the day. Only this time, they're on two opposite sides of the law. Although one can argue they're all good guys because the cops in Dukes of Hazzard are corrupt. So you know what? They are all good guys. Just forget the last sentence. They're all good. The two stories are great and action-packed, but I think the story of Starsky and Hutch is a little bit more enjoyable. I think it's more grounded and realistic based on their environment. Starsky and Hutch was fun and easygoing with a nice mix of action, and plus it was funny as hell. I did feel like the comedy in Dukes of Hazzard felt a little forced to me, and that's not to say that it's not a funny movie because I love both of these movies, but I think Starsky and Hutch gets the point for me. Before we get into round two, let's have a bonus round for the cars. Starsky and Hutch is a 1974 Gran Torino, like we mentioned before, and that red and white looks absolutely beautiful. And I've even seen the screen-used car that they used in this movie. It's right here, and by God, that was awesome. The Dukes of Hazzard is a 1969 Dodge Charger, and it has a Confederate flag on the roof of it. Okay, well, Starsky and Hutch wins the car round. Another point for my boys in blue. All right, moving to round two. Let's start out round two in this brutal battle by discussing the players of Dukes of Hazzard. Playing Luke Duke, we see Mr. Jackass himself, Johnny Knoxville. He's a goofy actor, but he did a pretty decent job as being the wild and crazy one of the bunch. You can tell he was a Jackass cast member because, by God, there are a lot of goofy Jackass stunts in this movie, and to be honest, they feel a little out of place. But I gotta be honest again, I think they're only in this movie to appeal to the Jackass fans who would go see this movie in theaters. Next in, we have Sean William Scott as Bo Duke, a great actor in his own right. He plays kind of an airhead moron who is in love with fast cars and winning races. That's pretty much all he brings to the table. Of course, we see the very beautiful, very gorgeous Jessica Simpson as Daisy Duke. And by God, she does a great job in this movie as an actor. It's a shame that all of her scenes, and yes, I literally mean all of her scenes, involve seducing men or being sexualized. Playing Boss Hogg, we have the legendary Burt Reynolds, and he plays a wonderful villain in this movie. Super believable, and you want to hate him so bad. The second villain easily has to be Sheriff Roscoe, played by MC Gainey, who is another mean and nasty actor you can totally get behind hating. It's also awesome to see all 5 of the Broken Lizard comedy group scattered throughout this movie. 4 of them have cameos, and Kevin Heffernan as Sheev, the gross redneck conspiracy guy. A decent cast with some big names. Let's move on to Starsky and Hutch and see who plays in that. Playing David Starsky, we have the very famous, very popular Ben Stiller. And what can I even say about the guy? He's Zoolander, for God's sakes. A legend. A Hollywood powerhouse, no doubt. He plays an incredible by-the-book cop. Speaking of playing characters well, we have Owen Wilson playing Ken Hutchinson. And again, my man plays a really convincing, lazy, borderline corrupt cop. I can't really explain it. I just get that vibe when I see him. Playing the main villain in the movie, Reese Feldman, we have Vince Vaughn, and he went from playing the good guy in Dodgeball to the bad guy here. His performance is believable, and he gives off the vibe of being shady and murderous. Not too shabby. Playing the stylish street informer, Huggy Bear, we have motherfucking Snoop Doggy Dogg, man, and he is awesome. He plays a wonderful Godfather-like role, the dog father, if you will. God, I love Snoop Dogg. Jason Bateman plays Feldman's sidekick, who is a real careful, paranoid crook. And he brings a level of nerdiness to the character that really ties it together. We already mentioned this, but the OG Starsky and Hutch returned at the end of the movie. Paul Michael Glasser and David Soul, which is so awesome. In Dukes of Hazzard, we mentioned the appearance of the Broken Lizard comedy group. Well, Starsky and Hutch also has a group, the infamous Frat Pack, which was a nickname given to the group of comedy actors Ben Stiller, Owen Wilson, Luke Wilson, Will Ferrell, Steve Carell, Jack Black, and Vince Vaughn. This movie features 4 out of the 7. I'm also shocked to see that Will Ferrell, who plays Big Earl, is uncredited, which I don't get why you would do that, but that was awesome nonetheless. He's basically doing what he does in every movie, just acting like a goof. This is tough because both movies are loaded with powerhouse talented actors. To me, the supporting actors of Dukes of Hazzard are much better. They play the characters well and you believe them more in their performance. Like we said, Starsky and Hutch takes place in the 70s, so a lot of the side characters really don't feel like they fit into the 70s, except Snoop Doggy Dogg. He looks like the only motherfucker in that movie that belongs in the 70s. God, I love that. The rest of them seem pretty cheesy and campy. It comes down to the chemistry between Bo and Luke Duke and Starsky and Hutch. I think, much to my surprise, I'm gonna go with Bo and Luke Duke from the Dukes of Hazzard. They just seem to flow better. There's a whole history behind them that you can really get behind quickly in this movie. In Starsky and Hutch, they get thrown together, and it really takes them up to the end of the movie to get it together. Round 2, the players, is gonna go to the Dukes of Hazzard. Alrighty, 1-1, baby. Not counting the car round, alright? Before we go into the third and final round of this bloody battle, let's take a break and hear from our sponsors. Boy, I hope you're enjoying this episode of Box Office Battles. It's absolutely fantastic. I just want to take a second to thank my 2 sponsors. The first one is patreon.com/officialjoeyc for all your exclusive Joey C needs. We got everything there, man, and you can support the channel. The second sponsorship of today's video is Amarina on Spotify. You can hear hits like and another hit like every time you call, I lose control. And a third hit like she's absolutely fantastic. Please check her out on Spotify and go to patreon.com/officialjoeyc. I'd love to have you. Alrighty, back to Box Office Battles, baby. Bye-bye. Going into the third and final round, we are 1-1, baby. 1 to Dukes of Hazzard and 1 to Starsky and Hutch. The car round doesn't count. Although if it did, Starsky and Hutch would have 2. This final round, we're going to look at audience reception, box office numbers, and legacy. Let's go. Dukes of Hazzard came out August 5th, 2005, and made $109.8 million at the box office on a $53 million budget, which is a pretty great performance. The movie was actually number 1 at the box office on its opening weekend, which shocks me. Taking a look at Rotten Tomatoes, we see a 14% on the tomato meter and a 46% audience score. That's not good, actually. I'm kind of shocked at those numbers. Ugh. It tracks because this movie has been trash talked for years online. I'm kind of ashamed that I liked this as a kid. It's important to note that it was nominated for 7 Razzie Awards, including Worst Picture and Worst Director, which is rough. Moving on to Starsky and Hutch, it came out on March 5th, 2004, and made an impressive $170 million at the box office on a $60 million budget. That's pretty solid. It received mixed and average reviews when it first came out, but it was praised for Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson's chemistry, and it having a heartwarming script. Looking again in the Rotten Tomatoes scores, it has a 63% on the tomato meter and a 46% audience score. Again, that's really not too good, but it is better than Dukes of Hazzard. Again, I love this movie. I still quote it often in real life. No joke, I probably quote it once a week. It seems to have a bigger, more favorable legacy online than Dukes of Hazzard. They're both regarded as not so good movies, but Starsky and Hutch seems to be remembered more fondly. Alright, before we get into the final results of this episode of Box Office Battles, let's take a break and hear from my creator friends on what they think of both movies and who they think should win. All right, Joey C, roll the tape.
First off, Joey, I just need to say thank you. One side effect of being a content creator who talks about movies is that it's very hard for me to justify spending time watching a movie or show if I'm not going to review it or otherwise create some kind of content about it. So thank you for giving me the excuse to watch Dukes of Hazzard and Starsky and Hutch.
I'm sorry. I'm way too manly for this debate.
We're back once again to do another Box Office Battles, and this time it's between 2 movies that took the wonders of the classic shows they are named after and turned them into modern comedy classics.
One movie which I never saw, and one which I saw about 20 years ago and never in a million years thought I would watch it again.
To be honest, these are two movies that I don't really remember fondly because I didn't watch them a lot growing up. But
So first off, the one that I never saw before, that would be Dukes of Hazzard. This movie came out, I think, when I was about 14 or 15 years old. I remember seeing commercials for it at the time thinking, this looks like I'm a little too old for it. It looks like very juvenile, just wacky slapstick humor.
As far as I'm concerned, both these movies are for sissies.
are they good now? I don't know. The Dukes of Hazzard, on the other hand, was my favorite of the two because I loved the Dukes of Hazzard TV show. I grew up with it, watching it almost every day. I was obsessed with the General Lee, the car, of course.
If you enjoy it or not will depend on how much it makes you laugh. For me, the answer is almost not at all.
So I was more drawn to the Dukes of Hazzard movie, and that one was directed by Jay Shandakshar, the guy who's behind Super Troopers, the dude behind Broken Lizard. He's done a lot of great comedies over the years, but this had like Johnny Knoxville and Sean William Scott. It was a weird one, to say the least.
Except for one or two moments. One would be when they got their car fixed and saw the Confederate flag on the roof. And then, of course, they took it a step further when they get all that ash on their faces. Both of those moments I found kind of funny in a I can't believe they went there sort of way.
Not cool buff guys like me, okay?
The one scene where Sheev is getting hot dogs thrown at him and he picks up one and starts eating it, that made me laugh. But otherwise, I was just waiting for the movie to finish.
Starsky and Hutch, of course, starring Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson. And, of course, they had such great chemistry in Zoolander and pretty much anything that they've touched. It was kind of just adding onto it with Starsky and Hutch. It was a fun time.
And also, I'm not racist.
But Starsky and Hutch, not a great movie, but it had an actual plot. It felt like a real movie. This is the one I saw, and at the time I remember thinking, that was okay. Probably will never watch it again, but back then, 20 years ago, I had no idea that a Joey C was entering my life. And it's moments like these when I'm so glad he did. But yeah, Starsky and Hutch, like I said, feels like a real movie, even kind of has character arcs.
But when it comes to which one I think is better, I'm going to say Starsky and Hutch just for the basis of Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson. I think they have a better comedic chops. I think they're better actors overall.
Where you've got Ben Stiller on one side, the straight-laced, follows all the rules kind of guy, who has to work with Owen Wilson, the guy who breaks all the rules. And in the end, they learn to work together, and it's kind of genuinely heartwarming, especially when the rift forms, but they find that they, in the end, really need each other.
Dukes of Hazzard, it's got its funny moments, but I think it's kind of stuck in that 2005 time period, where Starsky and Hutch, I feel, because it is portraying a moment in time in the 70s, it kind of has more leeway.
And I thought the comedy was generally more consistent than Dukes of Hazzard, though that's kind of a low bar. Definitely wasn't striking 100% in this movie, but you've got the situational comedy of, again, these two very different personalities bouncing off each other.
Todd Phillips, the guy behind The Hangover, was behind that one, so you could definitely see his little touchstones here and there. But
the one moment that I remembered, even 20 years later after seeing this movie, is the interrogation scene where Ben Stiller is trying to pretend he's playing Russian roulette. He fakes putting a bullet in the gun and then doesn't realize the bullet actually fell back in. That creates a comedic tension that made the next 30 seconds pretty hilarious. There's the moment, again, very sitcom-esque, where Huggy has to pretend to be a golf caddy and it creates that awkwardness. So some genuine cleverness, some actual emotional stakes, and a real plot. Felt like a real movie. And by default, that makes it better than Dukes of Hazzard.
Out of the two, I'm going to give it to Starsky and Hutch. Joey, thanks again for letting me be a part of these fun box office battles and making my brain hurt. Till next time.
So, Joey, I hope that my small contribution here helps you finally put this matter to bed. We can end the debate after 20 years, and the world can move on. Dukes of Hazzard versus Starsky and Hutch. Film adaptations. Starsky and Hutch wins, in my opinion.
And I think the winner of this action-packed box office battles is, drumroll please, Starsky and Hutch. Starsky and Hutch pulled ahead in the plot round. It won again in the bonus car round. Doesn't count. Things got tied up in the players round, but Starsky and Hutch came out on top in the performance round. It's hard to deny cold hard numbers. It made more money, got higher reviews, and the overall attitude towards the film is a lot more positive than Dukes of Hazzard that I've seen online. I do love both movies. I used to watch them both with my dad often as a kid, and rewatching them both today was such a pleasure, and it really brought a smile to my face. That's what movies are all about, man. In every movie, there's something beautiful. Just like in real life, there's beauty all around us. Take a deep breath and focus on the beautiful. There's a lot around you, my friends. Folks, ladies and gentlemen, non-binary, gender fluid, and everybody else in between, thank you for watching this episode of Box Office Battles. I greatly appreciate that. If you want to support me, you can head on over to patreon.com/officialjoeyc. You can follow me on twitch.tv/officialjoeyc. I'm supposed to plug one more thing, and I can't even remember it now. But folks, I really appreciate you watching. If you have two movies that you want to see me pit together next, oh, I forgot what the other thing I had to promote was. Join my Discord. It's in the description. If you know two movies that you want to see me pit together next, let me know. Join my Discord. Hit me up on Twitter. The artist formerly known as Twitter. Sorry about that. With that, I leave you with one thing. Okay? Thanks for watching. I greatly appreciate it. Keep your eye out for the next video, episode, movie, live stream, whatever it is, man. Listen. Cherish the precious moments. Be loved. And stay, dude. I'm out of here, folks. I am really sweating, and I'm going to go make a PB&J sandwich, so you'll just have to excuse me, and I'm just going to keep this running, so see you later. Alrighty, where's that sandwich?